So on that note, let's take you back to the Sandton Convention Centre. Bongiwe Zwane is standing by. Bongiwe, that was, it was palpable from here, the level of respect, mutual respect and mutual warmth between our two countries.
Definitely, Iman, the warmth, and as you said, even, describing it perfectly, the handshakes appear to be getting warmer and warmer. But there's something else, which is another layer to the conversation, and that is social media. How is it receiving all of what is happening here at the BRICS Summit? And I've got with me our colleague, Dinilohlanga Mekuto, who is SABC News digital producer, who joins us in our makeshift studio. Dinilohlanga, thank you so much and welcome. And I'm laughing first because you and I were talking a lot off air about some of the sentiments on Twitter and just their views about what exactly is going on here. And I see there's a lot of talk even about the expansion.
Yeah. So for the past 3 days, we've been looking at what's trending concerning the summit. From the first day and the second day, hashtag BRICS Summit 2023 was what was trending. It was the hashtag. But from yesterday evening, last night, it was just BRICS, right? So people were just talking and engaging on the summit with that hashtag. And one of the tweets that stood out this morning was about the expansion. We now know that there are 6 countries, I think Iran, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Argentina, Ethiopia, and Egypt have been admitted. They're probably going to be put in place. So someone tweeted something along the lines that these countries have a lot of oil and they control a significant amount of the world's oil. Where would this put America? Where would this put the US that want to put their currency on everything that is happening that has to do with trade? And some of these countries, we know the Arab countries, are countries that are in control of their minerals, their mineral wealth, their commodities. So people started talking on that one. I want to just look at a few tweets that came up. A person who's very popular with some people on social media, Sinclair, said, Saudi Arabia joining BRICS is a major coup against the US geopolitical ambitions. And this also ties in with what President Putin said yesterday about challenging BRICS countries to use their currencies to trade amongst each other. So people are just talking about that. Americans are seemingly paranoid, even taking it as far as saying, this looks like it could be the beginning of World War III or a new world order.
And the reason I'm wondering is it because they simply do not understand what's going on here, or what is the basis then of this war talk?
Well, let me actually try to find a tweet or two on that one. Someone says on this one, at Coach Nomaira, he doesn't sound American though, but he was speaking on that. He says, without control of oil, USA economy, Canada economy will collapse. That's why we see debt forgiveness programs, people selling their houses, the pandemic, etc. A lot of changes coming out our way. Take such tweets with a pinch of salt, because people do come out on these platforms. They are not that educated and well informed on issues, right? And they might share their views without really understanding what's happening in the background. But on the sidelines, they were talking to our Minister of Finance, Inoko Dongwan. He was saying, look, it's not going to be a rapid thing. Not like we're going to wake up tomorrow and then we're going to have this de-dollarization or doing away with the dollar. There are a lot of processes that have to take place if this really happens. Because if you're trading with corporates are already used to the dollar. What will the other currencies be linked to? Those type of conversations are what's happening.
Yeah, and I suppose, you think about whether or not countries would want to be prepared to lose their autonomy on some of these conversations, or even have one central bank. He was actually saying that to us, that it's a conversation to say, do you then have one central bank? Do you then have one monetary policy? Do you give up? What is your identity then? And what is the identity of this BRICS currency then look like? And those are some of the questions that he was saying, they're asking, and they're not clear. So for them, there's a lot of the modalities that need to be ironed out in this conversation. But I wonder, what are some of the, the people who are partaking in this conversation saying? Do they actually even understand that, this conversation is about the use of local currency? Do they even know what that is? How are they engaging?
I think that's where we come in as the media, because what you've just said now on what the minister said about the autonomy of different central banks, and are we going to all want to join a BRICS central bank? How is that going to work? I think those are the conversations and the information that we as the media should be sharing with the people, to say it's not going to be an easy road. There are a lot of policies behind the scenes that have to be changed on this whole autonomy issue. One of the tweets that was a bit scared of what's happening, the changes, right, says, it looks like World War III is loading. Another person who commented on that says, I share the same thought. I wonder if the American oil cartels are going to tolerate what BRICS might do to the ownership aspect of the oil economy. I've never known them to give up the petrodollar economy without a fight. So I think that's where those fears are coming from. Do you think America is just going to let its dominance on the economics of the world go without a fight?
And it's interesting because, when you say that, the minister, for example, says this summit is not an anti-West or anti-anyone summit. Okay. It's a summit to deepen our own relations. At the same time, we're in conversation with Thembisa Fakute, who was saying that for him, he doesn't see them sitting back, particularly the Western nations. He was saying it now might be a time for them to go on a charm offensive, to even, start to have conversation with various leaders and all of that. But it's all interesting how these perceptions are playing out on social media as well.
What's really interesting on this last day, it looks like there's a lot of interest on what is happening. I don't know if it's the matter of the expansion, but comparatively, in terms of the tweets that have been doing the rounds on BRICS, yesterday, I think around about this time, we had about 40,000 tweets. But today, we're in the hundreds of thousands. So I think the culmination and the expansion and the talks around the de-dollarization and the issues of oil is what's really driving the conversation.
And I think for me, Dini, also, just to ask you on that one, because you have I don't know if it's the pleasure of sitting through tweets, because if there's one thing I run away from is spending too much time on social media. But is it because they are getting more acquainted with the conversation and they're starting to feel comfortable with it? Or is it because there's still a lot of questions, like you were saying, the media needs to come in? Is it still a lot of questions that they have? What are you finding?
There are a lot of questions, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot of misinformation. That's why I always say, we see what's happening on social media. But what we should ask ourselves, where are these people getting the information from? Are they getting it from mainstream? There could be issues with mainstream, your biases as media houses. Are they getting it from their friends? Are they getting it from the internet? So that's what's driving the conversation. But one of the tweets that stood out was from a crypto guru.
Okay.
He was saying people must start looking at cryptocurrencies now, because it looks like the dollar could be volatile with these changes. And no one wants uncertainty. So once we're in that mood of uncertainty, people move away from the dollar to commodities and cryptocurrencies and other vehicles of investment.
I'm still not sure about digital currencies, by the way. I'm a very conservative, individual, consumer, anything. But one of the things that, one thinks about is the conversation around a possible BRICS currency, as some have described it, and also the conversation around the local currency being used for payments and all of that. It's what one would describe as a separate conversation. And I wonder if the users understand it in that way, to say, if there's a BRICS currency, that's a separate conversation. It takes place with modalities differently. If you have to pay in local currencies, it's about the payment systems and what then becomes of that. Is it something that social media is grappling with in a manner that is able to understand what this all means?
People are just talking from their point of view and from what they are picking up probably on social media. I can't take it further than that. I'm not an expert on it, but those are the conversations they are having. Obviously, there are a lot of questions and there's a lot of fear. Hence, tweets like could be the start of the Third World War. We could view it as misinformation, but if it's misinformation, which we know thrives on social media platforms, the onus is on us to give out factual information from informed people that have the know-how and how these processes and policies come about and work.
Sure, Dini, you talk about misinformation, and that is something that we really need to deal with. That disinformation, just aspect alone of social media is a huge concern. And as you say, it's time to close that gap and have the media close that particular gap. But let me leave it there with you. Thank you. Go sift through the thousands of tweets, and I don't know how you do it, and you're still staying sane.
I almost felt like an economic analyst now.
Maybe we should have you as a digital economist or something. I don't know. I'll think of a perfect title.
Cryptocurrencies, I'll come and talk on that.
That is Dinilohlanga Mekuto, who is my colleague at the SABC. He's the SABC News digital producer. And Iman, as we are sitting here, not very far from us, we still have that BRICS Plus, conversation currently taking place. Those conversations continue, and of course, we saw even, some of the developments around that particular meeting, where China and, South Africa is co-chairing that meeting, where Sophie is watching. But we also here watching these developments not very far from us as these talks continue, as we're just walking around, even speaking to various individuals of just their thoughts and impressions of this particular summit and whether or not it lived up to the expectations. And I think these are some of the conversations that will be taking place in the coming days to say whether or not did South Africa live up to what, we had promised. I mean, you think about just what Mzwai said a little earlier on, that this is one summit that is going to be spoken about for years to come. 10 years on, we'll still be talking about some of the critical agreements that were reached here.
We're at an historical cusp at the moment, Bongiwe. Thank you very much for that. And as you say, people wear more than one hat. So it's interesting to see how we are dissecting both the economy as well as some of the headline and marquee issues there at the Sandton Convention Centre, and indeed in social media land in terms of how people are responding to the conference itself.